The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily represent those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting group. If you or anyone you know might be interested in making a television show, please call 260-421-1250.
Tonight we have a special presentation by two of our members, and I will turn it over to Hillary real quick because I'm not going to do a lot of messing around tonight because we have to be out of here by 8. So Hillary, would you like to introduce the program?
So before I introduce our guest artist tonight, I just wanted to let you know that our workshop program is kicking off this year, and Darlene and Diana are the first ones to offer the class, the first workshop. This is an added benefit for the guild members, and it's a great deal. And they have completely filled up, but there is a door prize tonight of a workshop seat, so they're going to add that person to it. But anyway, our presenters are very qualified. Darlene here has been, she worked in the commercial art field, and she is an amazing artist. She's going to handle the perspective part of the presentation. And Diana Fair was an art educator. She still is, actually. And she has been doing colored pencil for 25 years, so you're in great hands if you take this workshop. And without further ado, I present Diana and Darlene.
As Hillary said, I came from the commercial end of things with my art field, and I was in commercial art for 40 years. I found a lot of what I did dealt with a lot of perspective, and I'll give you some examples later. But first of all, and I am doing the perspective aspect of our class, I wanted to give you the Oxford Dictionary definition on perspective. See if you all agree with it. The art of drawing solid objects on a two-dimensional surface so as to give the right impression of their height, width, depth, and position in relation to each other when viewed from particular points. It's really what you need to create believable art.
You need to stop talking or mute yourself. Do this through.
And
Can you just hold a minute? I'm having people here.
people have communicated with pictures for over 5,000 years. And this is an example of one of the early pieces that you could see dimensional work done. And it's the overlapping of figures and shading. And to have it done that long ago, this was from a burial chamber in Thebes, Egypt, and it can be found now in the British Museum in London.
Is she close?
And let's see, in the early 1400s, they started getting a little more sophisticated. This was a painting done. They're getting there, but if you look closely at it, some of the lines are misjudged. This goes to a vanishing point here, and this goes up that way, as we'll teach you next week. Let's see, and then after 1450, books were written, architects designed buildings, things were coming together, and they really got sophisticated with their drawings and designing. This is one, I apologize it's so small, but you can come up and look at it later. This is a good example of one-point perspective, and I'll get into the differences between the types of perspective later, but this is an early rendering of one-point perspective. Yeah, that would be
from 1450 to 1475. This is said to have been done. I think next I'm going to be very basic in my class next week. We'll touch on construction and definition of things. But I thought I'd bring in some of the examples of some of the work I've done over the years that include perspective. One of the accounts I had was for a toy manufacturer in Fort Wayne, and I did a lot of their owner's manual illustrations, more like technical illustration maybe. But if you can see, there are ellipses here with an axis in it, and there's square portions in here and all sorts of angles. This was all done with a technical pen, which nobody uses anymore because it's all gone to computer. But I miss it because it's just not the same. You know, this was done originally on vellum, and you sketch underneath, you put a layer of vellum on, and then you do your finished work. A lot of other things, French curves, nobody uses those. It's arcs that you make on the computer. And all sorts of templates. But I'll never get rid of them, but I don't use them that much anymore. But I've got some of the tools I've used through the years I brought with me. Okay, yeah, and like I said, something like this would have been used for packaging also. This larger one is one that I did for a carton that they had. And this is the original size. So I don't know if you can, well, you can see it on the screen, I guess. But again, you've got perspective in the wheels and just about everything you see there. And the one thing in packaging, or anything for that matter, that's advertising, you have to pay attention to whether it's going to reduce down and still be as strong, you know, with what you've done. And this is an example of that. Another account, or a couple different ones, I worked for a legal firm at Fort Wayne that dealt with patent drawings. And this is a different type of perspective, but it, in my mind, is still perspective. But these are isometric drawings, and all the angles are the same. It's not like you would have a vanishing point to go to. They're all laid out. All of your vertical lines stay vertical. And this is a detailed drawing of the product. Not that same one, but a different one. And showing lines for the wrap to show the curve in it. Just different things you can do to make it seem more dimensional. And a simpler version for this is a two-point perspective, but this is another illustration. This was done for the newspaper, and it's just a wash, and there's a little bit of ink in it, but it's very simple. You know, the lines go that way, and there's a center line, and the thing that I want people to get out of the class next week, and I see some of you in here that are taking it, is that when you look at a piece that you've done or are working on, if something doesn't look right, it probably isn't. And I want you to be able to look at it and see what you could do to correct it. And it doesn't take a whole lot of. Okay, well, I'll keep talking.
Thank you.
And okay. One of the first things I did out of high school, I was always kind of proud of it. I approached the Home Builders Association of Fort Wayne, and I did a sample drawing of a home, and they always had their annual parade of homes. And I was so proud of the fact that the first summer out of high school, I got the contract to do their first booklet. So that's what got me going on this stuff. This is much later, but I've done a lot of commissioned works for homes. And this is a little bungalow. It's in the south part of town, but it's really a cute little neighborhood. Yeah. And I do like my trees. Everybody knows that. And this is another one. This was, whoa, I knew that would happen. It's okay. There. It's fine. We'll solve it. Maybe. There we go. Are we still in range? Yeah. Okay. This was another 2-point perspective. This, I had a grainy photo of it, and I also had their blueprints, which typically gives you a front elevation and the floor plan. So I had to get a little inventive with this one, and they were really pleased with it. So enough said on that, but I do have it framed back here. It's just a copy. They ended up with the original, but okay. I guess what I started to say before I was interrupted the first or second time. I don't remember.
By the potty?
Everything I've shown you has a bit of perspective in it. And you'd be surprised when you look at something, even if it's a canning jar, there's perspective in it. There's an oval, there's an ellipse. And that's another thing that we will probably work on next Saturday is sometimes, people will draw a vase or something and it just doesn't look right. Well, it's because it's not matching. It's not on the center, or there's a lot of things that could be wrong with it. But if you start with a good foundation on that drawing of the ellipse and the center of the drawing, the center of the vase, and build on that, it helps. So, okay. I have examples of 1, 2, and 3-point perspective. This is 1 point, and you have your horizon line, and on 1-point perspective, all of your front plane is always square. The sides go back to the vanishing point. But this square, every one of them are all a flat square. All of the vertical lines stay vertical. They're all parallel to each other. And that stays the same in 2-point perspective too. Okay, thank you. And here is an example of 2-point perspective. And there's different views. This would be the front corner of this box on each of these. And this would be what they call the bird's eye view because you're looking down. And this is just a normal straight on view because that's your horizon line with vanishing points on both ends. And this is the worm's eye view, which is kind of goofy, but that's what they call it. This is one that can get really interesting, and it is three-point perspective. Oh. We won't cover that next Saturday. But there's your 2 points there, and then you've got a third point. You can either have it down at the bottom or up at the top. The one at the bottom, as it gravitates or radiates out, your top always ends up larger. If it were at the top, it would go the other direction. And it can make a really dramatic drawing if that's what you want. Yes?
Sometimes what you see in those fisheye camera lens views, that or is there another type of thing?
Is it photography, you mean?
Yeah.
You could probably, I don't know how that's set up, but yeah. Oh, let's see. I think I'm running out. Here's an exercise we might try and do next Saturday. It depends how much time we have. I don't know if you can see it, but this is just an example photo of a chair. And I wanted everybody to look at it next week, and we're going to try and draw one just by looking at the construction of it and where the legs go and what they equal and is it in the middle. And you can study things and figure them out. Makes it kind of fun. So. When I was giving examples of the three vanishing points, here's a guy that is awesome, MC Escher. I mean, he just played and played with all the vanishing points, and I could study this for hours, but that's beyond. So, does anybody have any quick questions?
What was this fellow's name?
MC Escher,
Online, if you have questions, please ask through chat.
Escher. And this, you can look at it later, but it's a print from 1960. So, okay. Yes, that portion of the presentation is done.
Thank you, Darlene.
You're
Coming up
welcome.
with all of this.
Colored pencils were not invented until the mid-1800s. And I'm old enough, not that old, but I'm old enough to remember some of the very first colored pencils. And they were a pencil that has blue on one end and red on the other. Yeah. And I remember those from my childhood, and that was about the only experience with colored pencil that I can remember. Those were used for sketching, and the military used them, too, on their maps and so forth. And then in the 1900s, 1924, the first colored pencils were invented as an art pencil. And the quality of the minerals in the colored pencil, you know, with pastels or oils, there's student grade and there's artist grade. And you always want to spend the money and get the artist grade. You will be very disappointed. When I started out, I started with, I've been drawing since I was 4, but when I started out here in Fort Wayne, I decided I'd be a watercolorist. And so I went to watercolor classes, Peggy Brown, and I went up to Wisconsin to Peggy Zaluka. and got very frustrated. Watercolor is not easy, and it's very, very, have a hard time controlling it if you don't know what you're doing. So I thought, well, I can do this in colored pencil. So I started in colored pencil. And so I've been working, in colored pencil since probably 75, 76. So I've worked a long time. I wondered, there's all kinds of colored pencils, and I'll tell you about them in a minute. I was wondering how my art, which is not particularly perspective-oriented as far as thinking of a path back. Now, I do pastels like that, but colored pencils I've done very few with, trees and meadows and paths. But I realized with this picture, one of my earlier pictures, with this picture, there is perspective. And actually, there's three, as far as I know, three perspectives here. There's this perspective going back that way, this one going this way, and that one coming down that way. And the important thing with perspective when you're drawing a box or whatever is to understand that it is volume, that it has shape, and some of it comes toward you. Okay, so in colored pencil,
There's a little box.
you have to, like if I would tell my students, beginners, you have to feel this. You take the apple and you hold it and you look at it. I mean, it sounds crazy, but you've got to get a feeling for that volume, for that solidness. And so, this one is actually round, you know that. You've all held a pepper, and it tapers back. And the same thing here, and so forth. So it becomes an understanding that when you're drawing. Colored pencil is a transparent medium, like watercolor. You layer it. Otherwise, if you take your colored pencils and you color book your picture, you're going to get a very flat surface. So you want to layer it to build up those values. You that are oil painters, you understand that value is the changing of an orange in a red into an orange, into a yellow, into the white. And you do that all with layering. So we talk about pressure, and I don't know if it applies to watercolor or oil. It applies quite a bit to pastels, but with colored pencil, you're actually touching. That's why I find oils difficult and watercolor for me, because I'm not touching the surface and feeling the drag. With oils, you're working, hopefully with a whole arm and a brush, you're working far away, and that's gooky and schloopy onto the paper. And it's not the same as drawing. So I transferred from a lot of colored pencil to pastel because it's the same grit, that you feel going down. With pencils, there are, someone asked, what are the kinds of pencils? Well, Prismacolor is probably the best known. And it was made here in the United States, and then they went other places, Mexico, I guess. And the quality has kind of slipped a little bit. I didn't bring any pencils, but when you're, I should have, when you're looking at your pencil, and this one will illustrate it pretty good, when you're looking to go to United or someplace, pick up the pencil, look at the end of it, and look at the lead. The lead should be in the center of that wood covering. If it's whopper-jawed, when you put it in the sharpener, it'll eat your nice $2 pencil down to about like that before you get a sharp point. And those of you that have ever taken a class with me, sharpen your pencils is what I say over and over. Yes, you can work with a dull pencil, but you need it sharp to do some really good work, you know. And part of the reason is we think of paper as being smooth, and it is not smooth. It is like this. And when you color on those top of those ridges, and you get this white paper popping through, you know. And you probably don't want that, especially if you're doing a portrait. So you have to have a sharp pencil to get down in those grooves. Now, the second thing from layering is burnishing. And that's when you put on, I'm talking 10, 20 layers of pencil, okay? Not, oh, I've finished my picture, and I can't tell there's any colored pencil there. That is not ready for burnishing. You have to have a lot of wax buildup, and then you press with a blender, it's colorless, or you do it with a white, light gray pencil or something, and you press as hard as you can, and that polishes it. It melts, the friction melts the wax down into the paper and makes it shiny. Now, you know, sometimes you don't want a shiny surface. Let me grab a picture here. This is a portrait I did of a boy named Ryan. It was at a studio. I'd never done a portrait particularly before. And this lady, Bonnie Otten, up in Michigan, taught me in 2 days how to do this. And it's a matter of doing it lightly. It's a matter of many layers. But you don't do heavy pressure. If I had pressed on his face, he would have been shiny like a wet stone. And so you don't want that. So I love doing portraits, but I don't do a whole lot of them anymore. So that'd be something to look at. This is a painting I did. Yeah, I could. Excuse me, I need a drink.
Diana, were your peppers burnished?
Possibly in parts. But, you know, you'll have to look at it and see. This one could have stood some burnishing. It got in a national show out in San Francisco, but it was one of my early pieces that I did. Maybe I ought to go back doing them again, I don't know. But I should have burnished the aluminum foil. But this was way back when the Colored Pencil Society was just beginning. And people, if you have ever looked at Colored Pencil Society and seen the artists on that, you know, it blows your mind. I mean, they can be super realistic, photorealistic. That's not what I want to do now, but you know, it's a wonderful thing, and they do all kinds of things. It's just amazing. Some of the things that you can do to make it different, and that's kind of what I like to do now. I was told early on that you can't do colored pencil large. You know, it's time consuming. So don't tell me I can't do something. So I went home, and I had a cold or the flu or something. I had to stay home from school. And I sat in bed with a full sheet of paper, and I did a colored pencil. And, you know, you can do what you want to do. And so some of the things, then I kind of got into doing a watercolor. And on this, I've done 3 feet by 5 feet ones, okay? And you lay it on the table and you take cheesecloth and put it on and doilies and anything. And pour ink over it or watercolors. You have to come see this. And it leaves the print. And then when it's dry and everything, I go in there with maybe some more watercolor to cover up some of the white, but I'll go in there with colored pencil and I'll dig out and create shadows and make this real woodsy and viney. And that's how I did my big ones. Another thing you can do that's fun, for a background, is called frottage. And it's an old technique, and what you do is take your paper and you find something interesting, like the texture maybe on that bottle or on the wall or rocks, and you rub it with your colored pencil, lightly, I guess, and it picks up the prints. And you can use that. You know, it can be very abstract, you can be very realistic, you can do a portrait, and then in the background wall have used frottage to create a different texture, a different thing. You want to turn your brain on and get all kinds of things. I wanted to share with you that you don't have to do watercolor on paper. You can do it on all kinds of things. This is a drawing that I call Maria. I have no idea who the lady is. She's Finnish, and she's not here anymore, but she was. She's 88 here. And she's up in Upper Peninsula, and Gwen Gutwein and I met her. And she came over to America in 1938 to get away from the Nazis in Finland. And she came to marry a rich Upper Peninsula farmer. I don't think she ever did, taking a look at the farm that she was on. But she never learned English. And her daughter translated for us as we talked to her. But I thought she was just the coolest lady. So Gwen was taking pictures, you know, so she wouldn't notice. And so this is Maria. The interesting thing about this picture is that it's done on cloth. It's some sort of a calico, thin cotton cloth. And you adhere it to a piece of board, mat board or something, with gesso or Elmer's glue or Mod Podge or something. Okay, so the cloth is on the board. Then you spray it, and I was told in this book to spray it with starch. And so that gives you the grit for your pencil, kind of seals the cloth, and then you can draw on top of it. And so when you see these little glittery things, that's part of the cloth. And so I just drew Maria on top of that. And if you, I've read a lot more now, and John Kelty does the same with his watercolors, that you can spray it with the fixative. And the one I just heard online recently, he sprays his watercolors, I think he does watercolors, his watercolors 6 times, and then it puts a seal on the picture, so nothing can be damaged. And then if you want it matte or if you want it shiny, you can add oil paint varnishes, you know, on top of that. So I didn't do that. I mean, she's probably unprotected. But, yeah. And then, no, I'll just hold these. Thank you. Then I took a class with a man named Everett Everson from Arizona, and he does he does lizards and plants from Arizona on tile. So this is travertine tile. Okay. So I brought this one because it's very rough stone and you can see. But you want a tile, travertine, which is a little hard to get nowadays. You want it unfinished. It's got to be the stone, the limestone. And then you do your colored pencil on it. And then you spray it or paint it with matte finish, you know, a fixative. Let's see, what else? Colored papers. My people like Susan there know that I have favorite papers and not so favorite papers. And Canson Miton is not my favorite paper. But I have learned that it does have some good benefits. So you can use, and that what I say that Canson, it comes in all kinds of beautiful colors. And you can also get pads in gray tones and, you know, other colors. And your colored pencils look really cool on it. One of the things that a lot of the students like to use is black paper. It's sort of magic when you put your colored pencil down on it, especially using white or light colors. It just pops up like a ghost. And so here's a picture of someone's dog. I don't know if you can see it. You'll have to come up. And the dog was black, so I didn't really color the dog at all. And I colored around it. And you can look at it a year later and say, well, I need to pop that white a little more, and go back and do it, because the colored pencil is very good about doing that. The reason I still have the picture of this lady's dog is that she didn't want it. So I've had that. Yeah, yeah, right. I've had that before. I was telling someone my favorite story about selling art, okay? I was talking to a lady. I hadn't drawn for a while, so, you know, you get into one of those. Ugh. And so we were talking about dogs. And she says, oh, I got to show you my dog. Oh, you know. And she showed me this little dog. And I said, well, send me the picture. I'll draw it for you. So I did. So I went back. And I gave her the picture, and I knew she couldn't afford anything. And so my mouth wanted to say, well, $20 would be fine. And I couldn't even say that. So I just stood there. And she said, well, I got to pay you. We got to pay you. What? How about 2 tubs of tapioca pudding? I said, you got it. You got it. This is my little dog, Jady, and she is just so cute. She's an applehead Chihuahua. She's so cute to draw with those huge ears. Yeah. And then I introduced her to, I'm a sucker for animals. And so somebody gave me a sob story, and I got this puppy, and Jade is saying, what, do we need a new puppy? But, you know, so that's Sir Patrick Charles VI. And the reason I'm showing this is, I was taking a class with acrylics, and I don't do acrylics. But I gessoed these matte boards. So I thought, I'll use it for colored pencil. But it works. It's just harder to do. And so it eats it up. You know, I'm finally of an age. If you came over and opened up one of my bedrooms, you might as well go shopping. Yes. Because I have I don't have that color. I have everything. And so now I've gotten to the point is, that people say, oh, if I sharpen my pencil, it'll eat it all up. I said, great, now go buy another one.
What paper do you like and recommend?
You know, what I started with was BFK Reeves. R-I-V-E-S. I'm sorry, I don't have any saliva, so I have to.
You want some of mine?
Yeah. No, thanks, that's all right. BFK Reeves is a rag printmaking paper, and it's really great for colored pencil. Strathmore Vellum is nice. You can do hot press. You know, people say, oh, you can't do this. Yes, you can. You just have to know how. And, you know, I can share my favorite paper, and you try it, and you say, I don't like this. I don't like the feel of it. So everybody, oh, thank you. Everybody has a different, you know, feeling for that. She reminded me, here's a little box. It's got my 4 dogs and a cat on it. Okay.
No birds? What happened?
Well, this was maybe before my 27 birds. I had 31 animals in my house at one time.
Wow.
So now I've got 2 dogs and 4 parrots, and that's it. And I am not getting another thing. Even if the Humane Shelter says, well, you got to take that rat. Why do I have to take a rat? It's going into depression. Give me the rat, you know. So, but I don't do that anymore. I brought the little box because you can do colored pencil on anything. I was asked by the Philharmonic to do a violin. They had old violins. They gave it to Gwen and some other people, and you were to paint a picture on the violin, and they were selling it for a fundraiser. So I had the violin. You know, a violin, it has that slick surface and it's hard. What I did is took a X-Acto knife and cut out what I was going to draw, and I got the varnish off, and then I put some gesso down there, and then I did my colored pencil on that. And did, it was something about the Firebird was the theme on that one. So, let's see, check my notes that I've told you everything. I love to talk. I taught for 40 years. Let's see, lots of different pencils. Now, do you have to have 150 pencils to do colored pencil? No. There is a man, and I just saw him in a book, he uses 3 pencils, that's all he uses. And he does landscapes. He uses a blue, true blue, magenta, and a yellow. And he can do these gorgeous pictures. So it's a matter of, you know, I bet all of you have heard, well, I'd just be able to paint this beautiful picture if I had that special emerald green. No, it doesn't work that way. But 3 different pencils, I want to try that. I want to limit, and I've been doing that when I fool around with oils. It's clean medium. You pick it up, you put it down. It's cool. Colored pencil is really nice. Goes over everything. It's not terribly expensive. And if you use a hand, you know, people are good with X-Acto blade and can sharpen their pencils that way. I can't. I mean, what's another $2, you know? Yeah, we'll have an electric sharpener there. So we will do, Darlene is going to be having you draw in perspective landscape, you know. And you can use those drawings for the colored pencil. So, we'll do something that's definitely perspective. And then I thought maybe we would do something like my peppers, or teach you how to do an eye or something like that for a portrait. There's the way I was taught for the portrait is a very simple method, and I can share that too. But we won't have that much time. It's only 3 hours, so I'll probably talk that time. So, I hope you come. I mean, or come and see what the people are doing. So, thank you.
Production facilities provided by Access Fort Wayne. Learn more under the Explore tab at acpl.info.